essentially what we did yesterday, Donald, was we did a bit of work looking at mental skills training, so the sort of the holistic view about what they are and what they involve, and of which today's focus is on imagery and concentration. So we would call those mental skills. So we sort of looked at the broad brush overview, and then we delved in a bit into arousal control, and a bit on anxiety management. But the team will share some thoughts from that as we get going. And it really doesn't matter that you weren't here yesterday. Today's topics are quite standalone, and they work fine, so that's no worries. I did record yesterday's sessions, and I've offered to share it with Donald, and I'm recording today's so that I can share that with anyone who misses today's session. And I'm making the assumption that's okay with everybody, but if anyone does have an objection, then just drop me or Andy an email, and we'll make sure we can splice and cut out things if anybody wants to. It's absolutely fine. So so let's get going with some round the table, the virtual table, just shares from yesterday, and the question that I posed to you guys on your reflections is, what might you take from the session into your coaching practice? So anything you think you might like to take forward and try and add in, try and do differently or more of, or anything that you might apply to your coaching practice. So my table, Alice is sat at the on my left, so she can get going for us, if you don't mind, Alice.
Cool. So I'm just trying to find where I wrote it down. I guess one of the things I took was actually, like, if things go wrong, actually having more communication with people in terms of their immediate goal setting afterwards was like an important thing. And then just ways of like using buddy systems and actually building up that level of support to help people early on, and trying to build that rapport earlier, obviously, because then it helps when anxiety levels and stuff go up. They're probably two of my bigger take-homes from yesterday.
Brilliant. Great. Thanks very much, Alice. Steve Frampton.
Yeah, well, after the session last night, I was chatting with my other half, who is also a paddler. And she has told me many times in the past that I talk too much. And she understands why. So what I'm going to try and do from here on is to make the chat that I have more focused and targeted when the clients have either asked for it or need it. So keep shut.
That's a really common trait of all of us as coaches, and I'm sure we all recognise times when we're doing it. So you're not alone there for sure. What I do quite a lot of observing coaches at work through various different roles I have with the SCA. One of my real simple measures is how much of the client's talking, people being coached, how much are they talking? And if they're not talking, they're either listening, which is fine, or they're doing, or they're bored, usually. There's usually one of those three things, they're disengaged. And so what I look for is lots of client chatter. And that tells me that they're active, they're actually actively engaged, and the coach isn't over talking. Because if they're just listening and doing, it's very, very quiet. Yeah, as opposed to there is an equal balance of their voices coming through.
And I think that's why I talk too much. If I'm not hearing anything coming back from them, I'm assuming, and I know we should never assume, but I'm assuming that they either haven't heard me or haven't understood what it is that I'm asking them of them. So,
and just giving people permission to
do the best,
Yeah, just giving them permission to chit chat. It doesn't have to be focused. And we were talking yesterday about how if we've just got a good constant dialogue going on, they are more likely to share anxieties or worries or niggles or anything like that. So we just want to create an environment where they're talking lots, whether it's informal or related to the topic that we're doing. So that's a great top tip, and just being aware of looking out for that, listening for it, stopping yourself, instigating chit chat, that all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Just add to that slightly, Lara. I think we all fall into that trap. One thing I found works for me is that once you've said what you need to say, to do something very clear that finishes it. So it might just be a look at the clients. Yeah, we're okay with that. And that also gives them either the chance to come back with any questions, or to think, right, he said his bit, I can start that chit chat among the group, or get on with the activity or whatever else. And it's sort of having that, whatever you do, but having that full stop at the end of what you need to say makes it easier not to fill you've got to keep filling that gap and keep talking. And I'm as guilty as anybody else, but I do find that works.
Great, good share. Thanks, Donald. Steve, the other Stephen.
Sorry, I had a mouthful of coffee there.
Badly timed, sorry.
Yeah, just to add into what people have been saying about silence. Silence is an uncomfortable thing, though, if you let it go on. So I understand why people will fill it with with my background being a teacher, now a head teacher. In a classroom, you would always give a short period, even 3 or 4 seconds is a long time, for silence. So anyway, from yesterday, what I took from that, I thought a lot about the arousal, and we were talking about the arousal training, and I thought something I've never really explained when I've done any coaching is actually explain how you're going to feel, and get the people to explain to me how they feel at this point, and just to point out this is a natural, experience. It's not, we all feel it, and it's just something which gave me more time to think about, and I thought about afterwards. Sometimes you get a bit of euphoria and almost like a dump afterwards. So actually explaining that to people, without labouring it, but just explain it's okay. I've feel a bit of heart rate is racing a wee bit. I'm a wee bit anxious here. Tell me how you feel. This is how we're going to go for it, and this is what we might feel afterwards. I just felt I'd like to explore that for myself on a personal level more than coaching. So.
Brilliant. I listened to this. I was on the internet exploring for information about how to I was delivering a webinar on rapport, and I stumbled across this piece of writing from a guy, and it was basically how to build rapport on webinars. And I thought, oh, that's brilliant, I can use that. And he was an ex-FBI negotiator, so do the talk down of negotiators. And one of the things that he said in his thing is that, and it was mainly about building rapport, but he said acknowledging the emotions that people are feeling. So if you can anticipate that somebody's feeling nervous or anxious by the look in their face or the action they're taking or the face they pull or whatever, if you acknowledge that emotion, so to kind of go, it's a bit full on, isn't it? Or you something along those lines that just brings it out onto the table, the fact that those emotions exist, is a really positive way of building the relationship and the trust and the rapport between you, which I thought was really interesting. And it links to what you were saying there, Stephen, that sort of idea that we don't hide those emotions and feelings. It's good to bring them out, and as soon as you do, people almost relax a little bit because it's now out in the open and it's been accepted, and you get it. You get that I'm feeling nervous, or so you might say something like, I bet your heart's racing a bit now. Is your heart racing a bit now? And they're like, God, yeah.
I think you can almost diffuse situations by using humour. If you know the group, not if it's a first time group and make a joke and everybody's not got that, it's a joke you're making. If you know the group and you make a joke, say, oh, look at this, they say, have a laugh about it before you do it. You can almost take part of that away. But you've got to know your audience, shall we say.
Yes, totally. Very much so. Very much so. For me personally, when I'm nervous, if I'm nervous about, like I've done a lot of whitewater paddling over the years, if I'm nervous about something, if I actually verbalize it to somebody, it's not good for me. It sort of, it almost makes it more real. Whereas if I keep it inside, I can deal with it a bit more and get on with it and control my anxieties and my fears and run the rapid. So if somebody said to me at the top, you look a bit scared, I'd be like, shut up. I'm trying to get that under control. So yeah, absolutely. You've got to know your people and get the timing right. But yeah, we're all coaches. That's what we do, isn't it? So yeah, good. So that must mean it's Shula on my round the table.
I think for me it was I think a lot of the things we talked about, I was thinking, oh yeah, I can think of situations where I've done that, I guess in some senses a bit intuitively, or maybe the other flip side of doing it intuitively is just doing it out of habit because that's what you've always done. So I think for me it's just sort of trying to be a bit more intentional about that and think, well, what is it that I've identified as the problem and what solution am I trying to use? And then if that solution doesn't work, the questions I need to ask are not just what other thing can I do, but have I identified the right problem? And if I have, then is there another strategy I can use from that kind of group of strategies? So it's almost making it easier rather than just kind of rummaging around in my big disorganized kit bag. I've kind of got it in compartments. And as long as I'm sure I'm in the right compartment, then I've only got a few things to look at. So yeah, I think that was brilliant. Kind of where I got to.
Yeah, great. And if that helps you get to the bit of organization in your kit bag, then that's brilliant. I think about my coaching rolling is a bit like that. I just keep throwing these tools out and think hopefully one of these eventually is going to work, but it is just okay, where's the next, and for somebody it'll work. But like you say, if you can be a bit more deliberate and intentional is a really good word, about what tools you're using and why you're using them and what the problem is, then that's brilliant. And that really, we talk about coaching, the coach's decision making sort of in the moment, being a pretty critical, you might call it reflection in action. So as a pretty critical part of our coaching practice, that we are continually going through this decision making process. What am I going to say next? What am I seeing? What am I going to do next? What's the best activity for this? What's happening in front of me? To sort of help inform that. So it's a really good dialogue to have with yourself while you're coaching, and help you tune into what's going on. And you might think, as we're going through the session today on concentration and we talk about attention focus, what are you attending to as you're analysing the performances in front of you? Great. Over to David, followed by Graham and Lachlan, and now that's my order.
Yeah, quite a lot of things have already been said. I'd sort of put down to sort of be more aware of, I guess, people's feelings and emotions, and sort of recognising that a wee bit more. So getting to know the people that you're coaching more. Also, yeah, sort of using the body and sort of peer support sort of, so I do that quite a bit because obviously you can't be with everybody all of the time. So allowing that and promoting that sort of buddying and peer support, that so that they can reassure and a chance to talk to somebody else as well. And then yeah, also another, I guess, third thing I took out of yesterday was sort of the goal reset and sort of taking it back and sort of looking at why things didn't go the way you'd hoped they would go, and sort of coming up with a different strategy to be more successful the next time around. Great,
brilliant, really good, and similar to others, but again, it's good that you've they're they're subtle triggers, aren't they, to pay attention to when you're coaching, which is really good to tune into. Brilliant. Graham? Just clear your mics off at the moment.
Yes. Now, of course, how you approach any coaching session is dependent on many things. The group, whether it's one-to-one, whether a macho gung-ho group of students, whether young kids, or whether they're a nervous paddler. So there's many different scenarios from the coaching the mind perspective. Now some of my experiences, and probably the most difficult, I think, to help with, is people that are very anxious or even fearful, and you can usually tell. And it's easier if you're on a one-to-one basis. It's not so easy in a group because everyone's different. And so you've got to be aware of the very nervous and the gun-hos and work around that within a group. On a one-to-one basis, for someone who's very nervous, one of the things I always ask when it's clear, or I know the person or had previous sessions, I will ask them, how did you feel when you got up this morning? And because they know they're going kayaking. And it's quite interesting, it can start the night before, you know, the anxiety and the feeling. And then quite often, particularly if it's one-to-one, they're more open to share that rather than trying to share it in a group. And I often find that, they feel anxiety and they feel fear, and that can disrupt their day from there on right up until you meet them and get on the water. So I don't think you can, it's absolutely pointless trying to say to someone, don't be nervous. There's nothing to worry about. It's going to be easy, because from their perspective, that isn't their experience. And so you have to subtly just soften that experience. And yeah, it's natural. We all have it to varying degrees, but how our mind perceives that experience. Because sometimes you're not thinking about the trip, but the butterflies are there, you know, or you're going to the loo 2 or 3 times before you even get the car, you know, things like that. And that can all build up and build up and build up. So when they get to the coaching, they're going, oh my God, I don't want to do this. I can't do this. This is terrible, you know, but they might just go along with it if you don't speak to them, because, you know, they paid the coach, or there's others there that, you know, the peer pressure thing as well. So it's very tricky, and this course is brilliant to help us to see ways of making it enjoyable. That's what it's all about, making it more fun. And it's very simple things, very simple.
One thing we don't really cover confidence on this module, which is a bit of an omission really, because it is one of the biggest things that we're often challenged with when we're coaching. I think I tackle it in there's two things.
You mean overconfidence, do you?
Underconfidence, yeah, lack of confidence.
Under or over, yeah, both.
Yeah, the underconfidence, the lack of confidence. I would say that confidence, like a good level of confidence, comes from success. So if I have lots of success at something, I will get more confident at it. So if I bake a cake and it comes out the oven looking great, and I bake another one and it looks great, and I bake another one and it looks great, I'm brilliant. I can make a cake. I'm happy. I'm confident. But if I keep bringing the cakes out and they've sunk, or they're not very good, or they're not very tasty, then the next time I make my cake, I feel less and less confidence. So understanding what success looks like for the individual, can help us with that, so we can try and make sure they have lots of successful experiences with us. And very often that's just winding it back in terms of the environment, but personal success doesn't mean much if it comes too easily. So we don't feel rewarded if we do something we think is easy, because we expect to be able to do that. So success comes around overcoming problems which were a little bit difficult. So if I'm a brilliant chef and I rock up and throw out another good cake, it doesn't do anything, you know, it doesn't matter. I should be able to, I'm a chef, that's what I do. But if I do something that's challenging and I succeed, then I'm going to start really building success. So we can play with that with our coaching to make sure that we're playing around that border of just difficult enough that they succeed, which is tricky ground to be on, isn't it? Because we can get it wrong very, very easily. But if we care about that, and just so if they get it wrong, we just tone it back, we just peel it back a little bit so that the challenge is still there, and then we celebrate the success with them. And we get more and more of that stuff happening in their bank of experiences, that confidence will grow. And for some people who've lost their confidence because they've had an episode of unsuccessful things, then often just taking it right back to taking it 2 or 3 or 4 steps easier than what they might normally do can just start rebuilding the stuff that they've lost. So we play with just important to sort of play with that in our coaching. And the other thing I thought of while you were chatting, Graham, was I remember running this session. It was part of a symposium, and I got a group of paddlers. They were mostly sea paddlers who wanted to go on white water. And I said to the group at the beginning, "What's a great day going to feel like? You know, so what's it going to look like today?" And 2 of them said that I don't capsize. I was like, okay, so there's my measure of success. If I can get these folk through the day having had good fun on white water with no capsizes, they're going to be happy and feel good, feel confident. So that helped me with my sort of that measuring of success. We had 1 capsize in the day and it was fine, so I got away with it. but it can really help you with your sort of setting the level of challenges. And we had quite an easy, it was the progressions we took through the day were very measured, quite slow, lots of time practicing before we built up to the next level of difficulty, because I knew that if I took it too fast, then we might end up with more capsizes and more swims and more anxiety and lack of confidence building. So just a couple of tools to pick that thread a little bit.
Just on that topic, Lara, it's quite challenging with young people, I find, because they spend a lot of time watching stuff on YouTube and everything looks really easy. So actually they come with this expectation that their success is going to be like up here, where in reality, they're like to be like down here. So you've got to do a bit of unpicking as well, haven't you, about what so they might come saying, oh, by the end of the day, I want to be able to, you know, paddle everything. I want to be doing a grade 4 by the end of the day. And you're thinking, Mum, this is your first day in a kayak, you know, let's just chill out a little. And it's just, how do you help them set those realistic? I mean, we were talking a bit about it yesterday, but it's almost like unpicking that a little bit for them and saying, well, what are the kind of steps that you're going to take? But I guess if you don't have that conversation, you don't know that's a problem before you start. Yeah,
and that is the nice words that you used there were, so if I might have these aspirational goals that there's no way I'm going to achieve them, and I verbalize them and I say, you know, I want you to be able to do that, help me do this, then without dismissing those goals, so without saying, Lara, you're never going to be able to do that today, that's completely unrealistic. We don't say that. We say, well, let's look at the steps we need to take to get you there. And so then I'm happy then that I'm spending the day or the session or whatever it is doing something which isn't quite what I thought it might be. But as I start to go through those steps with you, I realise it's what I need to do to get to where I want to. So yeah, that is a good point. But like you say, you've got to sort of inspire and motivate and help hold on to those big dreams, because they're really important, aren't they? Especially for young people, they're sort of those big dreams, we want them to have those, and we want them to come back and keep working towards them if that's what they are. Great. Sorry, Lachlan, I think you're last of our round the room.
Yeah, perfect. So I think what I feel has kind of already been said, but what I find really useful is as you were saying right at the start of this course, that a lot of these things we do sort of subconsciously already in our coaching. but I think I find it really helpful when something gets verbalized, and then you can start creating mental pathways and lists on how to deal with situations as they arise. So I think rather than stabbing around in the dark to try and make the day as good as you can for your group, you have now have a method where you can be sort of deliberate and intentional, as you were sort of saying before, to deal with problems before they arise or as they arise, and maybe even create a situation where those problems are no even longer problems. So that's what I'm kind of
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Great, thank you very much. Great. I'm keen to crack on and get through some content. So I'm just going to share my screen. Slides all set up in the wrong place. Here we go. So very much like yesterday, just let me rearrange my screen a little bit, and then I can see you all and see my slides. Keep in your mind as we go through the session today that question of how you're going to apply this to your coaching practice, because that's, any little nuggets. And I thought yesterday what the learning that you shared with each other was arguably the highest quality learning from the day. So the chats that we have and the contributions that you all make is super important to help bring this to life to each other, and help you with that sort of how you're going to put it into your coaching practice. The chat box, if you've got access to the chat box on your device, then you feel free to use that and interrupt me, but we'll whiz through. We've had a good half hour of chat already, so I'm keen that we crack on. And so today our focus is looking at concentration and imagery mainly. So we'll crack straight on and get into the concentration piece. So the question, the first question really is, what do we mean by concentration? What is it that we need to sort of almost get down to the definition of it? And when we use the word concentration, it's a bit misleading really, because what we're really interested in is attention, and what the very last bit on the slide there, what is somebody attending to? Because as opposed to at the top there where it says it's good or successful if we're concentrating, and it's bad or not good if we're not concentrating, we need to concentrate harder. That's not great language really. What we mean is we need to concentrate on the right thing at the right time. So it's where our attention is, what somebody is attending to, or what they're focusing. So really this module, we should rename it really into attentional focus is what the sports psychs call it, essentially where our attention is sitting. So and we're just going to explore that a little bit through a few slides and a little bit of a breakout room so you guys can have a bit of a chat together. So when we think about it, we think, what is somebody attending to, or what are they focusing on? I'm not going to do the video because I think we've had a good bit of chat already. I would rather use some breakout rooms to do some chat. So when we look at attentional focus, we can think about it in different planes. So the first one would be we've got a broad attentional focus, or we've got a narrow attentional focus. What we mean by broad is that our eyes are taking, our ears and our senses are taking in the whole picture. So we're looking at, I'm looking at my window now, looking out my window in my office, and I've got, there's a couple of houses across the road, and there's a couple of cars, and there's a bin, and there's some trees in the background, etc. And I'm taking it all in, as opposed to my eyes going just to the number plate of one of those cars that's in the driveway. So that would be our narrow focus. So in a paddling sense, we can think about that as when we're scouting a rapid, we're taking in the whole scene. Our eyes can see all the rocks around the bank, all the rapids, all the features, all the other paddlers, etc., etc. We're noticing perhaps what the colour of the water is. You know, is it in flood or is it not? If we're on the sea, we're noticing the boats around us. We've got this big, wide visual perspective of what's going on. In the field of play, so things like polo or football or rugby, we can see the rest of the team. We can see the rest of our team, the rest of the other team. We can see the other people around us. As opposed to then when we think about a more narrow field of vision, is where we're starting to see specific bits of the picture. So we might look at the paddler and we don't actually see all the stuff in the peripheral vision and the things around us. We might see what their edge is doing or where their blade's going or the individual moves. And so it's important for us to note that our attention might be at either end of those spectrums. It might also flit as well. So if we're doing anything at speed, so whether that be riding a bike or paddling down a river or paddling in a bit of tidal flow, if we're doing anything at speed, we'll tend to, our eyes will look ahead to where we're going and focus on that area, and then they'll probably look up and take in a bit more of a bigger picture. So I'm going down through some moving water and I want to make an eddy. I'll look and I'll notice the eddy and I'll take in lots of information about it. Then I might move my eyes away and start looking at and getting a bit more information around me. And as coaches, it's important that we understand that in terms of where our learners are looking and where they're focusing on and what they're seeing. And what often happens is it's often our eyes. We talked yesterday about fixating on the place where you don't want to go. So our eyes fixate on the rock we're about to crash into and we're surprised when we crash into it, as opposed to our eyes going to, in paddling generally you look where you want to go, and it technically helps you get there from the body movements and so on, so as well as the visual attention. But sometimes also we might want to look up. So if you think about a beginner who hits a wave, any craft we're in, it doesn't matter, their attention is so fixed on that wave that when they're through the other side of it, they are surprised because they've got no idea what's there, because all their attention has been from the minute they see it to the minute that they hit it and are just through it. The only thing they've seen is that wave, and they come out the other side of it, and now they're into this new environment that they haven't really taken in. Whereas an experienced paddler will come down and they'll have noticed the wave, and before they've gone through it, they will have had a look around them to see what's after it, and then their eyes will switch back to the wave to make sure they're still on track and it's going okay, and then their eyes will come up again and they'll be looking to, where am I going to go next, which direction do I want my boat to go in. So the idea that we have a broad, and we have on the scale there, a broad and a narrow attentional focus, but also that we switch quite agilely through that process. The other thing to think about when we talk about attentional focus is, in another plane, we can think about whether that focus is internal or external. And by external, we're thinking about obviously all the things out with the person versus things that are going on internally. So our own feelings, performance, thoughts, movements. So again, I might be heading towards that stopper and my eyes are fixed on the stopper, and I'm thinking, how on earth am I going to get through that? And that's what's occupying my brain at that moment in time, as opposed to, oh, there's an eddy over there, I should start heading in that direction. So again, it can move and it can flip between the two. My example there was a bit negative, so it could also be positive. So I might notice the push of the water is pushing me in one direction, and that helps me because it helps me go with it. And again, the more experienced we are, the more we're likely to notice those things. And we see beginners fighting the water because they're like, no, I want to go over there, but the water wants them to go over there instead, so they fight it. Whereas a more experienced will tend to notice that a bit earlier, and often will go with it. We'll recognize that it's not worth trying to overpower it, and sometimes we might just readapt our tactic to go where we want to. So again, it's kind of that recognizing what's going on inside and what feelings we have. And clearly all four of these things are important. So all four of those, the broad and narrow, the external and internal, are all really important. And they're important that we get them right for the right moment. So what I thought we'd do is we'd pop into some, come back to that one, pop into some breakout rooms. How many have I got? I've got 2, 4, 6, 8 of you guys today. So maybe into pairs today for a change. And I can bring that back up if you need it to come back up. Let me just set those up. Breakout rooms, 8 assignments into 4 rooms. Okay, so we've got Donald and Stephen together, Lachlan and Shula, Alice and Steve, and Graham and Dave as pairs. So maybe Donald and Stephen and Lachlan and Shula, if you guys would have a chat about the broad and narrow focus, and when that's likely to come into play for your discipline. So when might we want to encourage a broad or a narrow focus? And the other 2 groups, Alice, Steve, David and Graham, if you guys can have a think about the internal and external focus. Again, when those things might be particularly important and when we might want to encourage them. Does that make sense? Great. So I'll get those rooms going. I'll give you something like a short 10 minutes like I did yesterday. It ended up being about 7 or 8 minutes. And I'll bring you back in and we can have a share. And it'll be interesting to compare how the 2 groups and if there's anything additional that anybody brought in. And if you stray into the ground of switching, so attentional switching, when you switch between the 2, that's fine as well, because we're going to pick that up next. So I'll get those rooms going and bring you back in 5-10 minutes.
Those that are here now are really focused, Lara.
You can tell, yeah, Graham. Great. Do you guys have some good chat?
Yeah, just thinking, I was sort of very focused and thinking about the people being coached, but yeah, not, but also it's important to think about the coach themselves and what impact that has on the paddlers.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, big time. We'll pick that up with everybody now. We're getting them all back. Great. So let's just do a bit of a free for all on this one with the first 2 groups. So Donald, Stephen, Lachlan and Shula, and just feel free to unmute your mics as you want. To pick up on the chat you were having about the narrow and broad attention and focus, and when those might be good things, good examples of when we need those in our paddling.
Okay, well, I'll start off with one from Steve and my discussion. So we're basically looking at sea paddling, because it's very convenient with both sea paddlers. So I was looking to say, well, if you're planning to cross, an area of flow, not necessarily a tidal area, but not necessarily big waves and things, then you need to take that big picture, the broad view as well. I'm in this eddy, I want to get that eddy, that's what the flow is doing. I can use these two things as transit. And once you've got that broad picture, you can then, narrow it in and say, right, I've got my transit. Now, all I need to focus on is power of my strokes and the angle of my boat. And occasionally back out to the broad focus. I'm not going to get run down by somebody else or whatever. And then back in, so you continually varying it all the time.
Great. Brilliant. Any other examples from the teams?
Steve, do you want to chuck in some of yours?
Yeah, I think what you said was we were talking about your focus maybe narrowing when you're maybe in a difficult situation, and Donald spoke about you're the waves are really challenging, the weather's really challenging, and it's almost like a negative narrow focus because it's, I don't want to die, I just want to get out here, you know, so you just keep battering away. And you even said the point, he said something which struck me because I was in a situation whereby, just when I was learning, I was in that situation, I want to get closer to the beach, whereas the obvious thing to do was to get out as far as you can away from it, you know. So when you said that, I thought, I've been there. My focus that day was, I have to live. So it's not necessarily a positive, well, it is a positive focus, but it's a narrow focus.
A good one.
Yeah, it's a really pertinent one for us as coaches, that one, because that anxiety and fear can very much direct us into a narrow field of vision and attentional focus, or not the one that's best for the moment, put it like that one. So you end up being with the wrong focus because of either because of fear and anxiety, or just because you don't know where you should be focusing on. Is, you know, so it's sometimes it's just a lack of experience. So as coaches, then we can step in and try and encourage and find out what they're focusing on, and try and redirect that to something that's going to be helpful. And that's where all of your mental skills things come in, because if it's an anxiety relating thing, then it's all very well and good saying, don't concentrate on that, concentrate on this, and instead, and you're like, no, but I have to keep myself alive. I need to focus on that thing. So we bring in some of the relaxation techniques, or the spending time, or yesterday, I think Shula, you mentioned the rationalizing those fears and helping people understand them, so that you're not going to die. This is what's going on, and this is what's happening, and what we need to do is focus over here so people can relax about it. So yeah, very good to be aware of when we get drawn and our focus gets drawn into an area that's not helping us with our performance.
Can I just add before you move off that sometimes you know, that as a coach you think, well, I need to explain something to them, or I need to get them to do something else, and sometimes they're not going to be listening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and a lot of the time, to me, it's just as easy, and it works better to just paddle alongside them and have a chat with them, because it takes their mind off what's gnawing at their mind, and they're not conscious of you actively doing anything to help their situation, but it's one of the best tools in my toolkit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, Donald. That distracting technique of either you chatting to them, or them chatting to each other, or with kids playing a game, or, you know, playing sort of the word association games, or anything that sort of just helps take people's minds off something which is having a negative effect on them, is a great tool for us to have in our toolbox.
I tend to use as well the what do I already know? Like we all walk, most of us ride bikes, some of us drive cars. What do you do when you're walking along the high street? What do you do when you're riding your bike or driving your car? So they've already got a lot of skills that are very easily transferred to the world of paddling, and getting them to do what they do naturally. And
yeah. And we'll have all come across coaching scenarios where the people are overthinking things, and get themselves they're nicked in a twist because they can't see the wood for the trees, because they're just sort of concentrating so much on something, and the bottom line is you just want them to forget and do, like you say, Steve, do what their body's already trained to do. That thing, it's got it in the bank already, so let it loose and let it do that. And then, if any of you have read The Inner Game of Skiing, or the series of Inner Game books, and that's all about that. It's about letting your mind be not override what your body's trying to do, because your body will probably get it right as long as you turn the brain off. So and why kids are so good at learning. You know, little kids are brilliant at learning movement things because they don't engage their brain, they let their bodies go ahead, whereas adults, we get slower and more cautious and more, we think it more, and some adults more so than others. So if we can tune into that and try and notice it and try and see and play with our coaching tricks to try and alter that attentional focus, essentially, is what we're doing. What about sorry, Graham, you go on.
Yeah, one thing a tip I give to my paddlers, and it's probably more relevant on downriver stuff than it is on the sea and the lock, it is to build up and practice a scan. And going downriver, I say, look in the distance, look in the middle distance, look close, just keep doing that scan all the way through it. And then eventually that becomes a natural habit. And then you can pick out, oh, there might be a feature coming up in the distance, or you see the rock that you didn't see in the far distance, and then the close you see the one that's just hidden under the water that's going to tip you over. And that then can be applied when you run a rapid. Then as the rapid is more closer, those distances come right down. And it helps stop getting stuck in one of those modes, you know, looking at the bow of the boat instead of looking at the rock, you know, just a quick scan, and it I find it works for me. So and it's the same when you're driving a car, you know. So I'm very critical of some drivers, you know, they don't look in the far distance and they don't see the crash, you know, until they hit it. So it's a very useful skill. And
it's really nice to hear you saying that it's a skill that you're helping people to practice. So that idea of helping people to learn to scan and how to do it, and practicing that, lifting their eyes up, and because it's the beginners who will fixate on something more often than not. Like I say, either because they're worried about it or don't know any better. But we can actually encourage them to do the scanning. We can encourage them to, as you're going for this maneuver, look at the tree on the far bank, or as you're heading into the eddy, look for the rock and try and be 6 inches off it, or whatever it is. So we give people little tips all the time about what would be a good, useful thing for them to look at. And like you say, Graham, we actually help them learn that skill and apply it in paddling. And you will, whatever sport you're in, whether it's anything moving, looking at the front of your boat, looking at the front wheel of your bike, looking at your ski tips, looking at I had another one up my sleeve, but all those things are all common sort of, you're going to crash if that's what you're doing, and you know, on the bike, on the skis, etc. You're going to end up not going where you want to go, and it's just a common fault, isn't it, of often of beginners or more experienced people when we become under a bit of stress. In slalom paddling, I used to do a lot of slalom coaching, and I used to notice that when everything was going nice and you were well in control, and the same way I say it's the same when you're driving, when you're nicely in control, your vision's able to scan really effectively. But then if you start to drive a bit fast, or things come at you a bit fast, your vision just shortens and shortens and gets closer and closer, and then you're reacting to things, having to react to things really quickly because they're just appearing into your vision. So recognizing that as well is another good thing too. So we've tested this to the limit, and now my vision's come in, and I need to do something to give me the time and space to actually look up, and then I'll have more time to anticipate things coming at me. Great. Anything else from any of the other teams who were in the pairs chatting about stuff?
We were saying if you're coaching a new technique, then encouraging a narrow focus can be useful. So we were chatting there about some negative times, but actually if you're wanting to learn something new, then sometimes you want them to concentrate only on the edge of the boat, or only on your paddle placement, or whatever.
Great. Yeah, and we often say that, don't we? Look at the blade to make sure it's completely submerged, or whatever it is that we're doing. Yeah, great. Any others? We exhausted the
Just in
list.
just in that last one, it can also help this idea of the people who overthink things. So if you just give them one thing to focus on, then they probably won't overthink the other things.
Yes. Yeah. Again, it's that sort of distracting technique, isn't it? Is that it's actually, if I just give them this thing, this will keep them out of trouble because they won't notice X, Y, and Z. Brilliant. Great.
Again.
So I'm going to put my screen back on. So I guess just to start to summarize the chat that we were having there, that this sort of idea that it's really important that we tune into the participant's perspective and sort of note to ourselves and find out and explore what it is they're seeing, so that we can help them. And if it's a good thing, if their performance is going well and they're getting it right, brilliant. But if we need to, can we help them by helping them sift out the relevance and the irrelevance, and the things that are going to help them or not help them. And we said yesterday that we don't say don't look at the rock, because people will look at the rock as soon as you say that. So we use positive language and encourage people to look towards the thing that you want them to see. And it might be that we're drawing in other senses as well. So it might be that it might be that you're teaching a draw stroke, and that's sort of the looking for the bubbles or listening for the bubbles as they pop up by the other side of the boat. So we can use the other senses as well if we want to draw attention to something specific. And that just the concept at the bottom there, that the focus of attention is very specific to the needs of the activity, and I'd add in there the needs of the person as well. So that how do those things interact? If we've got, where are they looking now? What are they attending to? What do they already know? What experiences have they got? What does the activity demand, and where is that focus? So I don't think there's anything on that slide that we haven't picked up. Is there any questions on that before we move on to our imagery section to finish? We've had some great chat today. I'm conscious of the time. I'll try my best not to overrun today. I got carried away yesterday. I'll try my best not to do it. We're due to finish at 4:30, so we'll crack on. So our next section then is all about imagery, and we spoke about this a little bit yesterday, just in terms of what it is. The idea that it's sort of the visualization in our mind, making a movie, playing a movie in our heads of what's going on around us, and lots of research which suggests it's got high levels of success in terms of helping performers to help with skill development or skill performance. So the idea of mental rehearsal, so we're practicing something in our minds before we did it, or we're replaying it after we've done it to better understand it, or we're using it to get us in the right frame of mind. So it might be that we're trying to get ourselves a bit more wound up to do something, or a bit more relaxed to do something. So we can use our imagery to do that, amongst other things. We can use it to build confidence. So if I replay myself doing this rapid in my mind before I do it, and I replay it over and over in my mind of me running it successfully, that's going to help me become successful. So the first exercise I've got, I want to. Does anybody, let me stop sharing my screen. Hopefully a few of you have come prepared with a piece of string and something to tie to the end of it. Reach into your pockets. I need to prepare mine now. I don't think I can demonstrate this with my camera. Yeah, lovely, Graham, that's perfect. I'm just going to use a pen on a piece of string. So all we're going to do, this word best, I really don't think I can demo it very well. Essentially, I've got especially with that camera set up, I've got a piece of string and I've got a pen on it, and I'm just resting my elbow on a table here and dangling my pen sort of in the air, exactly Sheila can just kind of show me, and dangling it so it's freestanding from my sort of in my pinched fingers here, and it's just dangling underneath, elbows resting on something, and I'm nice and relaxed doing it. So your job now, your task is to do some mind trickery. You're going to try just with your mind to imagine that swinging, or swinging in a circle, or stopping swinging, and try and control the movement of the thing you've got dangling to just by thinking it. So just trying to make small circles with it. Like I said, it works better if your elbows, nice one, Lachlan, I can see yours swinging. So can you get it swinging, and then can you control it with your brain? Try and keep your hands still, so you don't want to be deliberately using your muscles to do it. Has anyone got any success?
I've impressed myself.
Did you manage to do it? If it's something you can go and practice when we're finished, because it will work better if you're in a quiet space without me rabbiting on. Essentially, when you do imagery, and now everyone's concentrating on their pens on their end of the pen string, so you can carry on with that one. But essentially, when you use imagery, you actually do get the muscles firing that you want to use. So if we imagine that we're dangling our piece of string, and that we imagine we want it to swing, the brain is sending those messages to our muscles and our nerves in our fingers and in our hand to make that happen. So although we're not actually deliberately trying to move our hand, and if you practice it, and it's a practiced skill, so if you didn't get it, then have a play with it and practice it. Try and get the pen, whatever it is, a pen or what, it doesn't matter what the weight is, and just have a play with it, and you'll get better at it. But you can really start to take control over that thing that you're dangling and spinning, because of those muscles firing. And that's why it's such a successful tool, a thing that we can use for our performance. Because if you take that if I imagine myself doing a maneuver on the water, then all those little muscle activation things are all happening and are all going on. And so the body then is it's like, I call it free practice. It's physically completely undemanding, unrisky, but practice at the thing that it is you want to do. So if there's consequences, it's brilliant, because you can have a go and you can practice and you can get your body warmed up for it. Someone said yesterday that you see the slalom paddlers doing it on the bank, so they get limited practice time on the water. They're not allowed to practice, so they do masses of mental rehearsal to run through what it is that they're doing. Some athletes will time themselves in the mental rehearsal and can be within a second of a 2-minute run on a course, because they're so accurate with their feel and their perception and their vision of what they're doing. So loads of uses for us. Let me get my screen back up. I think we've mentioned some of those. We can use it to get us psyched up and for motivation and confidence, to regulate arousal. So if we're worried or anxious about something, we can use it to lower that, to calm us down, to practice what we're going to do so that we're actually better prepared to do it. Use that to rehearse and practice, and it complements, it plays sort of alongside that physical practice. And again, it's not just something for the high level elite performers. Those are all things that are useful for beginners in the environment as well. So they're just as important for those guys to use it. So loads and loads of research which kind of backs this up as being a useful thing to do. So we're going to have a little bit of a practice. Just using the slide there, I'll try and be quiet. The silence is golden, and give you a bit of space to think of a positive performance and recreate that event in your mind and try and see it as it actually happened. So it might be something, a move or something you've done, or someplace you've been recently, and try and pull out of that some of the key things about where you were and try and add some detail into what you heard and what you felt and what your emotions were at the time. And I'll give you a minute of quiet to think that one through. You might want to close your eyes. You feel free to turn your video off if you want. So I'll interrupt you there. We're going to do this again in a minute with a different experience, so we can add a bit more colour to another one. But I wonder, just for you to reflect on whether you some of the things you might have picked up on, or maybe you forgot. So I'll just run through a few things you might have thought about the weather, what it was doing in terms of temperature or wind or rain, and how that felt, who you were with, the colours and the formations of things, what you heard, so the other paddlers, the water noise, the calm, peak chatter, what you felt, so maybe fatigue or contact points with your boat, how relaxed you were, and emotions like happy or fearful. So we can add loads of colour. We can get good at this if we practice it. So I think I took myself back to my paddle from Stonehaven on Sunday, and as I read through that list, that Donald will know this bit of coastline well, where all the nesting birds are, 2 or 3 kilometres of thousands and thousands of nesting birds. So strong in my image is the water was pretty calm, so pretty relaxed, and just that the noise of the birds was overwhelming. But actually I could have filled my picture with a bit more colour if I'd have noticed a little bit more. I was a bit tuned in on particularly the noise, and I could have perhaps added a bit more colour to my picture. I guess what I'd like us to do now is to think about a different experience, and this time I'm going to talk a little bit as I do it to try and bring out some of the experiences, things that you might want to attend to, and I'll try and do it slowly so that it gives you a bit of headspace as well to be able to think. So think about a paddling moment, or it could be biking, or anything you've done recently. Get that imagery going in your head, and let me just stop the share. There we go. So get an image, get a picture in your mind, think back to a performance when you've performed well, and start to tune into the feelings that were going on in your body, the movement, what was happening in terms of how the boat was moving, how you were moving. What could you smell? What could you hear? What physical sort of exertion were you going through? Was it easy, or were you working hard? Can you feel any muscles that were working? What colours can you see around you? Or what can you hear or smell? What was the task itself? What were you trying to do? What was the water doing? Are you imagining it in real time as opposed to slow-mo? Real time is better. And how did you feel? How were the emotions? Was it excitement, or was it positive emotions? Was it fear? Was there anxiety? So come out of your good place. Come back to me. So hopefully you can see here that we can help people to build better pictures in their mind by giving them some clues about the things that they might want to tune into. Now, what I used here, I had this slide up in front of me, and just sort of ran through some of those things in my chat to you. It comes from some work by a researcher trying to come up with sort of how do we help people do this better. And they came up with this acronym of PETLEP. I'm not great with acronyms. They don't help me with my learning or my memory. But it might help some. So essentially what I did there was I picked up through some of those features within the acronym. I particularly picked up on the physical and the environmental, the task, the timing, and the emotion. I didn't really pick up on learning or the perspective. So learning, where we it can be the idea that we can delete and erase poor performances in our memory and rerun positive ones. So sometimes if you're looking at a challenging thing, you might imagine in your mind, or a challenging maneuver, you might in your mind picture this going wrong. So you look at a rapid or a line, or you've got to land on the gnarly beach again through the waves, and your brain takes you to a negative run of that event. So you just see yourself crashing and burning on the beach, or capsizing or whatever. So we can learn to replay. We recognize that we need to rewind the movie and replay it positively, so that we can sort of arguably just set the learning and set the video play down the way we want it to go. So we're deleting old images and we're selecting new ones that are better. And the perspective can be sort of the time of when we're doing our imagery. So sort of in terms of a warm up and preparation. So we might do that slightly differently. Whether we're, I mentioned yesterday that as you get better at imagery, you can live it real time as if it's you in the movie. And when you're not so good at it, less practiced at it, you'll often be a spectator on the bank watching you. So it's much better if you can be in the movie yourself, and help learners do that. And a really good way to help people with their early imagery is just to get them to chat through what they're going to do. So just by verbalizing, if I'm standing on the bank or on the shore or out at the back of the waves, then just chatting through with the coach what it is I'm about to do. And the coach is a coach. You can then be listening into, have they noticed, are they aware that that bit of water might push them this way? They don't seem to have done that. So you might sort of you might bring that to their attention and use it as a bit of a coaching moment. But we recognize that we can help people sort of on that journey through getting better at their imagery, and by trying to populate it with the more color and the more picture we bring into it, then the more those little muscles are firing in the body. And the pen exercise, where we're getting better at firing up those muscles and getting the right sort of benefits from it that we want to. So I'll stop my share there. Let's go. Mouse. Great. And that's, I guess, just opening up really there to any questions or comments or ideas about how you might think of using that within the imagery within your own personal coaching practice.
From a personal perspective, if I watch quite a lot of videos, particularly the last few months, and it's usually videos of water I probably wouldn't tackle, but it's interesting to notice how watching that imagery you can really be drawn into it. And usually I start feeling anxiety and fear, and and almost you start moving your body, going this way, I want to get it going that way. So it does work, but there is the danger of overdoing it. Because when you do a scout and you say, right, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, got to do here, it can actually add to the fear in some respects. And it's probably more a practical thing, I think, for someone who's competitive, or they just want to get a better line, or just get down a bit of the water, more efficiently. but I think we can overemphasize the imagery thing for people who are just doing it for fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's finding that balance, isn't it, and tuning into their motivations and using it sensitively to what they're trying to achieve. So we're not, it's like any coaching tool, we don't want to be using it at the wrong time or overusing it or being too heavy-handed with it. But I think I'd encourage you to use it think about circumstances where it might work. And we've talked a lot about people who are anxious. So can we simply use it as just imagine yourself running it well, running whatever it is, you do a lot on whitewater, Graham, but just imagine yourself when you're on the water at the top, just imagine yourself doing it well. And that's it. That's all the coaching kind of intervention needs to be. And it just puts them it might, if it's the right person and it's, you feel it's the right sort of thing to say, just put them in a slightly better place for running it than they might have been if they were nervous or anxious. So we can be subtle with it. We don't have to be turning everybody into competitive slalom paddlers with it.
Yeah, because normally, particularly with the beginners or improvers, it is, if you don't cover it, they are imagining what can go wrong.
Yes, yeah, filling their head with images.
Yeah, so, but yes, to try and help them overcome that. But usually
I think that's the biggest tool for us for recreational paddling and imagery. It's to counter the negative imagery that a lot of our students may well have. And as you said, Lara, you don't have to go into it in too much depth. It might just be, you remember that stroke we did before lunch there, where you're doing a bow rudder or whatever it was, or just pulling through the wave. Just picture yourself, put that stroke in just after you pass that rock, and we'll be there. Just changing the mental image that's in the student's head. It might be a different thing you're saying to different students, but at the end of the day, if you don't, that negative mental image is just gnawing away at them. You'll never get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Graham, you mentioned video, and video is a really interesting tool as well that we can use because watching movies puts pictures in our heads. Kind of what it does. So if any of you guys use video in your coaching at all, just saving the best bits of them performing well and letting them watch those, editing out all the guff moves and the times it went wrong, but really good sort of a little just sort of celebratory wee movie at the end of the day, which has got them all doing the very best bits. It's going to help replace those images in their minds with all the good stuff, which is, again, it's a little tool that we can, these days with technology, we can do relatively easily.
I think the other place I think it's useful is if you're coaching a group and you've only got a limited amount of time and limited amount of space, so you're sitting in the eddy waiting while the rest of the group are ferry gliding across until you've got a space. So you can use that time that if your participants are using imagery, then they can be running it each time someone goes across, or whatever it is, whatever skill you're teaching. So it's a bit like your elite athletes, but a slightly different constraint.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to pick up on that point, Sheila, we all do that as coaches. If we use your example of people doing a ferry glide, you're watching somebody doing a ferry glide and you're sitting, there should be a strong stroke coming in the right. Oh no, they haven't done it. I mean, maybe I made that too negative. But if you notice these things, then it makes it really easy to do your feedback when they come back round past you in the eddy. So remember last time you did that? You're just where Johnny is just now, and your bow dropped off downstream. Was watching you there, and just a wee bit more power on the right hand side, and it would have been hunky-dory. Go for it, or whatever it is. Because people quite often say to coaches, how do you remember all that? You just watched 10 people, doing a ferry glide, and you've given them individual feedback, right? It is a skill, but if you're noticing things, and you remember that one thing, it'll bring back the image in your mind as a coach, and then you can convert, if you like, that in quotes negative image to what they need to do to make it a positive image.
Yeah, that, I think I use that in my coach, Donald, the sort of almost replaying the video of me watching them redo it, because I'm trying to recall what it was about their performance that I needed to. So I'll look at them and I'll kind of just replay the little image in my head, replay it. And the other thing is that Graham, you said you find yourself ducking and diving as you're watching videos. You move and you flinch and you do all of that. And it's the same when I'm coaching. I'm watching a performance, and those little those physical flinches or whatever it is that you're responding to, that is because you know so much about the intricacies of the performance that you flinch because you know that either their edge is off or something's not quite right about that performance, and it can really, you can tune into that and kind of go, I just sort of, I knew that was coming, because you're almost putting yourself in their boat and feeling what they're feeling, but they haven't noticed the thing that you've noticed. So again, you can kind of use it to try and help you. If that happens to you, try and work out, why did I flinch then, or why did I move or duck or lean or whatever it was, to try and help you understand the performance in front of you a bit more as well.
I mean, how many times as a coach, if you're in the pool and you're teaching rowing, you can tell before somebody even strikes whether that's going to be a successful row or not.
And if you can,
I mean, I sit in the pool and think, yeah, good one. They haven't even struck yet, because everything's set up, ready to go, and we can do it for any other stroke.
Brilliant, great, folks. Well, we'll call it a day there. For those of you who were here yesterday, I'll log it on the system as the foundation module, and you'll get an email confirmation. I think you get an electronic certificate come through, and it does act as 18 months of coach update for you. I know many of you have been so active over the COVID time that that's the least of your worries, but that'll all happen automatically in the background on the system. And Donald, if you want the certificate, if you're worried about that, or then you'll need to listen to I'll send you the video and you can listen to yesterday's, and then we could just have a quick chat to round it off, and I'll log yours on the system as well. We'll do that for Sally, who missed today. Good. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you everybody for your engagement. Yet again, really good chat and really good learning and sharing with each other. So thank you very much for that. That's what makes these sessions go well. So thank you for that, and I hope you found it useful. And I hope I'll all see you soon, maybe on the water. Maybe.
Well, thank you again.
Great. Thank you. Feel free to
ask Donald a question.
If you're quick.
I've
got a turnover waiting for me.
It's about, Lara and I were talking about Stonehaven launch fees yesterday. It wasn't clear whether you have to pay in the harbour or on the beach or what. Technically.
So the port jurisdiction, which is written into law, covers from basically the whole of Stonehaven Bay. So the headland to the south of the bay, through the harbour, north up the foreshore, right up to the water processing plant at Cowie. So technically, they could charge you for launching anywhere in that area. The harbour master is, pretty realistic as far as leisure craft, paddle boards, kayaks, things are concerned, and doesn't try and charge you. there have been, one or two sort of minor issues particularly with paddle boarders sort of getting in the way of powerboats and things, which is why there's the new restrictions on what paddle boarders can do in Stonehaven, and that's on the SCA website and circulated around most of the local clubs here. There haven't been any issues with sea kayakers. So, basically what I'm saying to the local clubs is, let's, keep our noses clean, and then, there won't be any issues. The problem is that the guy who runs a paddleboard school thinks he's been picked on a bit. So other users, particularly kayakers, need to be seen to be squeaky clean, so it doesn't give him say, but you're letting the kayakers do this, you're not letting me do it or whatever. And one of the things there is that as the access person for the area, I recommended that we don't use the slipway in the corner of the harbour as a launch point, because technically that's using the harbour, and people would be entitled to charge us for the use of harbour facilities. The beach at South End and the slipway in front of the sailing dinghy park, there's absolutely no problems over. And I'd suggest, if you're not happy from launching from that beach, then you probably shouldn't be going out, because it does get quite dumpy when the weather's up. Some people in the past have maybe used the harbour to get an easy launch, and then you get out of the harbour past the wall and think, this is a bit interesting. So it's just a case of being conscious of things, doing what we normally do, not drawing attention to ourselves, and everything will be fine. But if we do start drawing attention to ourselves, then don't be surprised we start getting asked to pay for something.
But technically, the whole area, the whole of the harbour bay, and even the Pebble Bay to north, is open to a fee of how much?
That is Aberdeenshire Council is presently £10 per boat. Or I think that's for a boat under 6 metres. So, they would be being pretty heavy-handed to try and charge each kayak for that. The harbour master, recognises that, but he is under a lot of pressure from the council to bring in money. So, just let's not give him any reason to be harder on us than he needs to be.
So, how much did you save the other day, Lara, on Sunday?
We didn't. No, we didn't pay. We didn't get asked anything. We didn't.
How many of you were there?
2.
Oh,
I had a date out last night, so starts adding up. If you do have to pay.
I wonder if the SCA could negotiate the same as down in the UK, wherever there's a charge, negotiate a covering fee for all kayakers that are SCA members.
We did touch on that with the Access Committee when the issue came up with some of the smaller harbours in Aberdeenshire, and it does open a bit of a minefield. So again, let's try not to go there.
Yeah,
So
we hear occasional stories of kayakers being asked to pay, and the word gets around, and you kind of know that they have a right to ask you to pay, and it is a facility, but most people sort of share the knowledge, and you learn I won't go there, then I'll go here instead. And very often, just like I said, any other harbours, there's often a little pebbly beach that you can access and use instead, which is the response for when it does get tricky.
Because I'm always in fear of going into the sea in my white water kayak, because I'm afraid that someone might come up and say, no, you can't launch here, or they say you've got to pay a fee. Well, after I've travelled far, why should I pay extra money? And
well, the simple answer to that, Graham, is if you use a harbour, then you may get asked to pay. So, as Lara says, there's normally a beach somewhere you can use. I know we're more limited in the northeast coast here, And some of the smaller ones, you know, Cove, Cruden Bay, Cosden, they've all got honesty boxes. And certainly as a club, we make a donation to all of these harbours on an annual basis, just as a goodwill gesture.
So we just say we're a part of Nesky, then, and then we're safe.
I'm saying nothing.
Great, thanks, guys.
Yeah, nice one.
Okay, then.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks.